I had a typically atypical upbringing. My mother is a concert pianist. My father was a psychiatrist. So I grew up surrounded by music and deep thought. Again, I thought it was typical. Apparently, my parents had a lot of odd friends, so I grew up surrounded by very, very interesting, unusual people, which I think opened my mind for the future, because I still like to be surrounded by unusual and interesting people. I also enjoy being surrounded by usual, interesting people. I find that people from all walks of life can be fascinating. And I try to keep... that's one of the things that I love about touring, is that I meet all kinds of people doing all kinds of things who are brought together by music, and specifically by music that I've made. I grew up hearing my mother play the piano, and was drawn by her passion for it. Started taking piano lessons at 6. Found that I didn't have the discipline nor the desire really to play classical music. Gave that up at 7 or 8. At 9, my uncle taught me some guitar chords. He was a folk musician. Age 10, I performed on TV for the first time. I did a Joan Baez song on local TV in Spanish. I learned El Preso Número 9 in Spanish. And then February 9th, 1964, age 10, I was one of the millions of young boys who saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. And my life was changed forever.
Was that the moment when you decided you really wanted to be a musician?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at those guys and I said, yeah, that's what I want. And I remember first I looked at Paul and I said, I want to be him. Then because he was charismatic and charming and having a good time. Then I looked at John and I thought, no, I want to be him because he was deep and sarcastic. Then I looked at George and I thought, no, I want to be him because he was just nerding out on the guitar. Then I looked at Ringo and I said, no, actually I want to be him because nobody's having more fun than he is. So I realized I wanted to be all 4 Beatles. And that really set the trajectory, since I already had some facility in playing the guitar. I was able to start picking up their songs very quickly. I started my first band the next day with my friend Bernie, who, since he didn't play an instrument, he was going to play the drums. We had a third member who was actually, I wanted to play bass because my first favorite Beatle was Paul. So I wanted to be the bass player, but I realized it was very difficult to find a guitarist at that point who actually played the song. So I switched to guitar and we found a bass player. The first band was called the Limestones, which I thought of that name because it was like the Quarrymen.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So we performed on that same TV show that I had performed on a year earlier. The band didn't get so far. We did the best we could, but we were all 11 and 12 years old, and there's only so far you can get at that point.
Yeah.
I spent years looking for the right combination of people. The hardest thing was to find someone who could really sing. And then when I was 15, we found a young man he was 16, an older fella, who not only could play really good rhythm guitar, he could sing amazingly, and he wrote songs. We formed a band called Evil Seed, which was, it's funny because there have been several heavy metal hard rock bands called Evil Seed since then. It was actually named for a naughty book that our bass player had found. about Devil's Daughter, and I think it was loosely based on The Bad Seed, but in this case it was a heavily sexual satanic element involved.
Right.
I wish I could find that book. I wish I could find that book somewhere. It doesn't seem to exist. But that was the first real band I had. Where we had real songs and real arrangements. And at that point, we were doing a lot of covers of Cream, Hendrix, Jeff Beck. All the sort of British blues rock that followed in the wake of the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
Then that took me through high school. Then I went off to university at 18 because that's what you did.
Mm-hmm.
Tried studying music, but wasn't particularly inspired by what they had to offer. Ended up getting a degree in physics because I liked it. I had this whole parallel life as a science geek. I was a ham radio operator from the time I was 9. I built my own equipment. I built fires, repaired my cars. So I always had a scientific bent. Before the Beatles, I was going to be the first prepubescent in outer space. And anyway, it was in my first week at uni that I met Rob Hyman in an electronic music class where they had Moog synthesizer number 003. And I recognized him. He was in a band that was already getting some notoriety around Philadelphia. And we connected. I joined his band. And that lasted through my first year of uni. Then he graduated. He and the singer continued writing songs, and the drummer, Rick Chernoff, decided that he wasn't a drummer, that he was going to be a producer. Mm-hmm. And he ended up getting a job pretty quickly for Clive Davis. Right around the time I was graduating, the singer and Rob and the singer David had gotten signed as a duo to Arista Records, and they needed a guitar player and a third voice and somebody who could make it rock. And that was me.
Right.
And that was Baby Grand, 2 albums, 78, 78. We were either ahead of our time or behind our time, but it wasn't the right time for those records. They were. I don't know if you've encountered them. They were very interesting. It was sort of like Steely Dan on steroids.
Right.
And now we're already up to 1979, where we had got 2 albums. They had Boga, because they basically crashed and burned. And we were trying to write a 3rd album, and we realized that this just wasn't the vehicle for us. The singer decided that he wasn't born to rock, which was true. He was a brilliant writer, had a very distinctive voice, but was never comfortable being the frontman in a rock band. So Rob and I looked at each other and said, "Can you sing? I don't know. Can you? I don't know. Let's try it." And try it we did. And we found David, our drummer, and then we were a band. At this point, we were sort of looking for an identity, and this was right around the time that the second British invasion was happening. It was sort of the British ska thing. And we said, you know what? Let's do that. I mean, the world doesn't have to know that we are virtuoso instrumentalists. Let's dumb it down in a smart way and write some really cool ska and reggae songs. Which we did. And that takes us to 1980.
So, why did you call the band the Hooters? I mean, I'm aware of the...
I'm sure, I know that the answer to that question is online, but I will tell you. We were looking for a plural noun that was not a household object.
Right.
So that everyone in the band could say, I am not a shoe or a chair, but like a Beatle or a Rolling Stone or a Whaler. And with this thought in the back of our minds, when we went in to do our first demo recordings, we had borrowed a melodica from some friends to do, because Augustus Pablo, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but his whole career was, he was a reggae artist, I guess he still is, and what he would basically just play simple melodica melodies over pre-recorded reggae tracks.
Right.
And we loved the sound of it and thought, let's try using that on some of our songs. At the same time, we found, we borrowed a mandolin to see it, because Rob was always curious about the mandolin. Ironically, I ended up playing the mandolin. He ended up playing the melodica. But we were getting set up, and the engineer said to us through the talkback speakers, "Let me get a level on that Hooter." So the melodica became the Hooter, and it didn't take more than a couple of days for us to realize, hey, there's our plural noun. It's not a household object. And it was kind of close to the Whalers, actually. So we became the Hooters, which really seemed like a good idea at the time. And had the restaurant not come along, it would have remained a good idea.
So, I mean, you got quite popular quite quickly, didn't you, in Philadelphia?
We did. We were very, very fortunate. We did some demo recordings. Not the ones where the instrument got its name, but that was sort of before we had the band completely together. But within a few months, we had our full lineup. We had we sort of inherited John Kuzma and Bobby Woods from the band that David Wasikinen was already in. Mm-hmm. Because they were breaking up, and we thought, now we've got a ready-made band. There's our bass player. There's our second guitarist. And we did some demo recordings, and one of them was an instrumental, ska instrumental by Don Drummond called "Man in the Street." Mm-hmm. And through happenstance, we ended up getting that recording on a local radio station, WMMR, which supported local musicians back then. We don't quite get the same support anymore, but a disc jockey named Michael Pearson played it once, and as they said back then, the phones went crazy. Tremendous requests, and the song went into regular rotation. So we sort of had a hit with a bizarre ska instrumental. And so all of a sudden we were, we went from playing 5 nights a week at biker bars in the suburbs to playing clubs in the city.
This is song that started it all, and it's gonna finish it all. Talk about home demo tapes. This one was as home as you could have gotten. We did this one before they invented tape recorders. Man in the street.
And then we did a residency every Monday night at this one club called Grendel's Lair, and it was just it was sort of like the Beatles at the Cavern. And the first time we played, we had 50 people, and we had 70, and within a couple of months, the line was literally around the block.
So what was the music scene like in Philadelphia at the time? I mean, was your music different to the mainstream groups around in that area?
Well, there were, sort of our main competition, although we didn't really think of it in those terms, but I think the other artist on our level was Robert Hazard at the Heroes. Robert Hazard, who, as chance would have it, also wrote "Girls Just Want to Have Fun."
Oh, right.
Which is a whole another story about how that happened. Because Rob and I were the band on that. We actually created that arrangement. That the song was originally very different from what the Cyndi Lauper version that we know. But it was Robert Hazard and the Heroes. There was a band called the A's, and they were all sort of new wavy, punky, Brit wannabes. They all kind of sang with a little bit of a Brit thing in their voice.
Right.
Everybody wanted to do English. And it's funny because actually I come to realize that the Philadelphia accent is not that far from London in terms of the intonation of vowels. So it was an honest mistake to some degree. But there were a lot of bands, with a lot of shoulder pads, and kind of chasing down that early '80s new wave punky thing. But we were the only ones doing ska and reggae, so that set us apart from the pack. And I think mostly we wrote better songs. Although Robert did have a few really, really good ones. But it was a great scene. There were clubs everywhere. I mean, we would play 4 or 5 nights a week at different clubs, and people would come. I don't know what those people did, because we would play until 1 or 2 in the morning, and they would go off. I guess they would go to work the next day. If they worked, I assume he did something. But it was a sort of a golden age for live music in Philadelphia, which I think is actually coming around again. Every time I go back to Philadelphia, I'm really impressed with how many venues there are to play now, and how many really good artists are playing. And of course, I think how ironic now I'm not there anymore.
So how did the songwriting work in the band? Did you have certain roles, or was it more sort of democratic?
It was absolutely not a democracy. It was a benevolent oligarchy. Right? It was Rob and I.
Right.
That was the idea from the beginning, that we were the writers and the leaders of the band, the directors. So yeah, we were the writers. We were open to suggestions from the other members. I mean, if somebody came in with a great idea, we were certainly all ears. But I think we sort of had an identity from early on. Ironically, the first song that we wrote, the first song that surviving Hooters song was "All You Zombies," which is probably the song that we're most universally known for. Even though we had different hits in different countries, we never really had a one worldwide hit at the same time. It was sort of we kept having bigger hits in smaller countries. But "All You Zombies" is the one that everyone seems to identify us with. And that literally was, I remember we wrote that in January 1980. And when we first started playing, we would start our first set with that to get it out of the way. Because it never occurred to us that anyone would actually like it. It was a weird song about, a weird Bible story with a reggae beat. But the song had a life of its own. We did a live broadcast for that same radio station, WMMR, I think in '81. We were opening for The Beat, which was very exciting for us, because I think of all of the sort of two-tone ska bands. They were our favorite, just because of the way they incorporated rock elements and musically they were really interesting. It seemed the other bands were doing more sort of a recreative, like a ska on steroids thing. They were sort of inventing their own world based on the ska thing. But we opened for them, and it was a live broadcast. And all of a sudden, the same radio station started playing the live recording of "All You Zombies," and it just had a life of its own. So we actually released that. That was our first or second single. So the song has always had a life of its own. And then, it was the first single from Nervous Night in '85. And the way that happened was, we assumed that "And We Danced" was going to be the first single because that was up, and it started with the mandolin and the melodica, and really had it's just an undeniable, we thought, global hit.
Yeah.
And we were and ironically, the U.S. is the only country where it really had a life. But we were mastering with George Marino, the legendary late great George Marino, and we went to mastered all 10 tracks for the album, and maybe it was 9, but whatever. At the end of the session, he said to us, "Well, what's the first single?" But we asked him, "Well, what do you think it should be?" And he said, "Well, obviously, All You Zombies, that's the most commercial song." And, we looked at each other like, that's a 6-minute epic. Sounds like an outtake from The Wall. And then we thought, you know what? Out of the mouths of babes, or in this case, mastering engineers. But that did become the first single, and even though it never, I think it charted 57 in the U.S., it was #1 in Australia.
All right.
And, to this day, that's probably, if I were to pick one song that really characterizes our band, our songwriting, it would be that one.
So you opened for The Who, didn't you, on the farewell tour?
Opened for The Who?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did. Well, it was The Who, The Clash, Santana, and The Hooters. To me, it felt as though we were out opening for Santana and The Clash were opening for The Who.
Right.
It was a long day.
Yeah.
But and it's ironic because really, but I talk about the Beatles as being the reason I do this, but really, the person that really inspired me to start writing songs was Pete Townsend. It was actually Tommy that really got me. Now, part of it was because I saw The Who perform the day that Tommy was released in the U.S., and it was, I would say, it was a very close second to the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, seeing The Who live for the first time. And I have many photographs from that show. But that was really, I was riveted. I just had never seen anything that loud, that powerful, that much visual information on stage at the same time. I found myself looking at John Entwistle a lot because I got tired watching Pete and Keith and Roger. But I never dared walk up to Pete. He did not give off a vibe of, "Hey, come talk to me." Yeah. Although we do have email communication, which was sort of came about in a roundabout way. But he's very, very nice on the emails. He always answers my emails and has complimentary things to say. I don't think that he really wants to hear me fanboy out on him though so much. Like when I met Paul McCartney, I had my list of questions. What guitar did you play the Taxman solo on?
Yeah.
How did you do this? And he was absolutely eager to answer everything. I have just as many questions for Pete about sounds that he got and guitar parts that he played, but I never really felt the entree to start asking. And I don't want to make it. I wanted to keep answering my email.
Oh yeah,
I'll leave it as it is.
I know that one. So I mean, the first time I became aware of you was when I joined the first company that I ever worked for, and I worked in a computer games company, and suddenly I wasn't at high school anymore. You know, I'm just around sort of cool people, and everything was on cassette in the office. We could all, you know, listen to things on cassette, and someone introduced me to two groups. It was the Sugar Cubes and a bit of a mixture, and of course the Hooters. You know, and
Wow.
yeah, so that, I mean, I'd never heard anything like either of them. I just loved the way that, I mean, the Hooters, it was a strange mixture because I was really into electronica. And I wouldn't describe you as an electronica band, but there were certain, you know, electronic elements to it, but also that sort of a folky sort of vibe to it as well.
Wow. So which Hooters album was it?
It was One Way Home.
One Way Home. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. See, that's the album that gave us the career that we're still living on in Germany and Europe, but it's the album that started the end of our career in the U.S.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
You know, it's very ironic, and I guess, and Satellite, you know, was our hit in the UK. That's what brought us to Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
Which is where we met Sir Paul. So the Sugar Cubes and the Hooters, that's amazing. I mean, it's just amazing that such different and diverse artists could reach the same ears and touch them in the same way.
Yeah, it was just I like really unusual music. You know, new music, different music, and I mean, obviously, you know, the Sugar Cubes were at the time before they became a bit more commercial. Just very, very strange and weird. Whereas yours was a lot more sort of, I wouldn't say mainstream exactly, but more commercial. And I mean that in a nice way, not in a bad way.
Yeah.
You know?
Accessible.
Yeah, accessible. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. I think one thing I liked about that era was you could watch something like Top of the Pops, and you'd get a reggae band, a punk band, you know, an electronica band, an heavy metal band, all in the same show.
Yes.
Whereas now you don't get that. It's all the same sort of bland sort of. I'm probably being a little bit unfair, but you know, it seems to be a lot more homogeneous now. The sort of popular sound. You know, if you listen to.
Well, you know, and there's so much of it has become niche.
Mm.
You know, either you're a Spotify top 50, which means that you're probably hip hop or EDM pop or Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
Who is really, from my money, one of the only two. He and John Mayer are the only two popular artists now that are carrying the torch of real musicianship.
Yeah.
And then there's country, which I've sort of been forced to embrace because it's the closest thing to the rock music that I love.
Mm.
But that's very interesting that you had that was your exposure. The Sugar Cubes and the Hooters. That would have been an interesting show.
So, I mean, you've done a lot of outside of the Hooters. You've done a lot of producing for other people. I mean, you worked with Cyndi Lauper as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
Before she was quite famous.
Yeah, we did that first album. We spent about a year with her working on that.
Yeah.
A lot of time went into that. Yeah.
And what's it like working with somebody that, you know, because I mean, obviously you're quite creative. I'm assuming they're quite creative. How is it to, how do you find working with different people like that?
It's, you know, it's like any kind of a relationship, you know, you have your times when it's a love fest, and then the gloves are on.
Yeah.
You know, Cyndi's a very dynamic person. You really didn't know what you were going to get from one minute to the next. When we resonated, it was amazing, and then she'd come back in and say, "No, I hate it. No, it was all wrong. It's stupid. I hate it." So there was a lot of back and forth on it, but you know, great art can come from that.
Yeah.
And I think we made a record that was certainly groundbreaking.
Yeah.
with her. I mean, it wasn't a record that I would have made on my own. My instincts are much more rocky. I like dirtier guitars, and she didn't want to make a rock record. She wanted to make a dance record.
Yeah.
And I think what we made was something that totally defies categorization.
Yeah.
Interesting. Girls Just Want to Have Fun. She originally swore she would never sing that song.
Yeah.
She thought it was demeaning to women. If you go on Spotify, you can find Robert Hazard's original version of that, or at least on YouTube. And again, very different vibe. And then we came up with that arrangement because we had tried everything else. And Rick Chertoff, who produced the album, who had been the drummer in our first band, he has a great instinct for A&R, for a voice in a song, and he knew that her voice singing that song was a hit. And we tried, but he didn't know how to do that. That's what Rob and I were there for. So we tried doing it as a rock song. We tried doing it like Cat Stevens. We tried doing it as a reggae, and we came in one day and we were talking about Come On Eileen, which was ubiquitous at that point. And who didn't love Come On Eileen?
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's just one of the most, if not the most likable records ever. And she said, can we make it like Come On Eileen? And I said, okay, let's try this. And I remember I had an 808 drum machine at the time. And I programmed in the kick drum from Come On Eileen, that boom, ba-da, boom, ba-da. And then I picked up my guitar and I played this. And
brilliant.
We did a little 4-track demo, and then after that it was, I always wanted to sing that song. But she, the album title is very appropriate. She is unusual. She's brilliantly talented. Not always the easiest to work with, but usually worth it.
Well, you did Live Aid as well, didn't you?
That was a last-minute coup on the part of our management and the local promoter in Philadelphia, Larry Maggot, who just thought that we deserved to be on that show. And Sir Bob wasn't so happy about it, apparently. In fact, he left us off of the DVD.
Really?
Yeah.
What did he have against you?
I don't know. I think he just, didn't feel that we had earned a right to be on the show at that point. I mean, the quote was, "Who the fuck are the Hooters?" which is actually quoted at the beginning of the Rolling Stone article about us. The year we won Best New Band in 1985. And ironically, a week after the DVD came out, he opened the show for us in Germany.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a bit sheepish that night. But you know what? It was his right. It was his baby. If he didn't want us on the DVD, it's still on YouTube. But that was a crazy day. I barely remember it. We were on and off stage. We were on for literally 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But apparently 1 billion people saw us all over the world that day. So they can never take that away from us.
No, that's amazing, isn't it? It's something I'd like on my CV personally.
I know. I have a big picture of it in my studio back in Philadelphia, and I look at it sometimes and go, "Who are those guys?"
So what was it like? Because you've made quite a few videos, haven't you, as well, music videos? And that was like the early days of music videos, really, wasn't it? The MTV era was just coming around.
Yeah.
What was it like to act in all of those? Because I remember you in obviously Satellite and I think the other one as well. Carla with a K.
Yeah. So funny. I haven't seen that Carla video in a very long time. That was a live, mostly live. And that was a strange show. That was the last show we did with Andy King as our bass player. We're sort of like Spinal Tap with bass players. We've had our Brad Smith has been with us for 31 years now, so I guess he's permanent.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a weird show. It was the one time we headlined in Arena, the Spectrum of Philadelphia, and we weren't really. I don't feel we were quite up to it. I thought it was a bit of hubris at that point for us to be doing that. Our show was scaled for a theater; it was not scaled for an arena. We'd opened for a lot of bands in arenas. In fact, we were sort of the world's best opening act. We'd opened for Bryan Adams, for Loverboy, for Squeeze, for Don Henley. And Satellite Video was that was an interesting one. It's funny that song has had such legs. Probably the song that I have the least emotional connection with of any of the Hooters songs.
Yeah.
I mean, musically, it's great. It's a brilliantly put together piece of music, but lyrically, it was just a sort of satire about the televangelists at the time, and it was sort of that. I think that story is sort of stuck in a moment it can't get out of. But people still love it, and it was our one hit in the UK.
Yeah.
Our first video was All You Zombies, which we actually shot in London.
All right.
And the director was Donald Cammell. I don't know if he's ever crossed your radar, but he was a controversial genius director. He had co-directed Performance with Mick Jagger.
Mm-hmm.
He'd done that with Nicholas Roeg. And he was a brilliant guy. I think he had a lot of demons. We filmed that at the Hammersmith pumping station.
Right.
And that's a video. If you haven't seen that, that's on YouTube. I think he did an amazing job with that. The only problem I have with that is I watch that and I just want to go back in time 34 years, shake my then 34-year younger self and say, smile. What are you so serious about? You're having the time of your life. You're living your dream. And We Dance was probably the most, at least in the U.S., is the video we're most known for. Mm-hmm. And was definitely the most fun to make. We resurrected a drive-in theater that was about to get torn down to build a shopping mall, and we had literally thousands of local fans come to that, and it was like a Twilight Zone episode where we brought it back to life for a night, and I'm smiling in that one. We're having a good time in that one. But it was just amazing, that we got to do that. And then we had All You Zombies. That's interesting. All You Zombies was directed by David Fincher.
Oh, really?
Yep. He had been working for Industrial Light and Magic, I guess, as sort of a special effects guy, and he really wanted to be a director. So he thought he would start with music videos, and I believe that was the first one he did.
Oh, that's amazing.
And he had a really clear vision for it, and really he went for it. And I think he did a great job.
So, out of all the songs that you've written, then, which one are you most famous? What's your favourite? I know it's hard to pick one out because they're all sort of babies, but which one are you the most proud of?
Of the ones that people know, I'd say, I hate to be obvious here, but I would have to say one of us.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a song that wrote itself, and even though I was sort of in this state of this meditative state when I wrote it, I literally just sang it. I created a musical track because my then girlfriend, now wife, asked me to show her how my 4-track Porta Studio worked. Mm-hmm. And I've been playing that guitar riff all day, so I made a little arrangement, a little track around it, and then she said, sing it, and I sang it. That's literally what came out.
Okay.
And I listened back and I'm like, wow, what is this? What am I saying here? And I still wonder sometimes. But I realized that in some way that the 4 minutes that it took me to sing that song summed up my worldview. Mm-hmm. That was the whole story right there. And it was just, happenstance that we were making that record with Joan, because the next day I played the demo for Joan and Rick Chertoff and Rob, who were, again, it was sort of the Cyndi team redux.
Right, yeah.
And Rick looked up and said, Joan, do you think you could sing that? And, the last thing I would have imagined, but she said, yeah, I can sing the phone book right after lyrics. And, we did a quick guitar vocal recording, and we all knew, hearing that voice sing that song, that was the song that found its voice, and the voice that found its song. We were going to be hearing.
You've written quite a few records for, pretty much everyone in the music business, all the big stars, haven't you? So how does that normally work? Do you actually have to meet them and work with them directly, or people like Robbie Williams, for example? I mean, do you have to actually be in the same studio when you write?
Yeah, always. Billy Myers, we did "Kiss the Rain" with Desmond Child. He had a real strong vision about that one. He had discovered Billy, met her at a writing camp in London, and decided he was going to make her a star, and that the song was going to be called "Kiss the Rain," and that I was going to write it with him. Mm. So we actually started the song in France at a songwriting camp, and then we finished it with her in London. Robbie Williams, we wrote "All Before I Die" in the same room. Mm. All the songs I've written with the Scorpions, we were in the room. John Bon Jovi recorded my song "Ugly," which I had written actually before I met John. Mm-hmm. But I had worked with John and Desmond, and I wrote a bunch of songs with him. And he heard me perform that song at a little songwriter show, and he said, I want to sing that song. But it's mostly been in the room. Hmm.
So what's Robbie... I'm sorry, my girlfriend's a big fan of Robbie Williams, so I have to ask you. What's he like to work with, Robbie Williams?
He was great.
Yeah.
This was at the very beginning of his career, and he had just left Take That, and the label had sent him to Desmond, and I don't think they really believed in him at that point. I mean, I remember something about a boy band refugee having a shelf life, and they just wanted to get something out in a hurry. Right. So, Desmond and I had assembled a small catalog of songs, and we thought we'd run it by Robbie and see what fit. But Robbie wanted to write, and it's All Before I Die actually started. Robbie and I were sitting in a room with I had a guitar, and I had just gotten this new little effects box that you could make a guitar sound like anything. Mm. And it had all these presets, and I was scrolling through them, and there was one called Start Me Up, and I played Start Me Up, and then there was one called Day Tripper, and I played Day Tripper, and then there was one called Generation. So I started playing My Generation, and Robbie and I sang My Generation together, a verse and a chorus. And at the end of that, Robbie looked at me and said, wouldn't it be great to write a song that says, I hope I get old before I die? And I sang, I hope I'm old before I die. And we wrote that chorus in in minutes. And then Desmond came in and he said, "Yep, that's gold right there." And we wrote the verses together and put the whole thing together. And we actually did a full production of that, which Robbie ended up recutting it. It was the first time I'd ever had a hit song that I didn't play on, or I hadn't been a part of the production. Which, on the one hand, was a little off-putting because I was used to hearing my guitar with the singer, but there was something very empowering about it, knowing that I'd written a song that was so good that it didn't need my guitar to be a hit.
Yeah.
But no, he was delightful, and he actually rang me later to work some more, and for whatever reasons, it never happened again. But I have great memories of working with him, and I'm very, very proud of the artist that he became.
Yeah, it surprised me a little bit because I'm not a big fan of boy bands at all, begrudgingly I sort of like Robbie Williams. It's despite myself, I'm a bit sort of anti-boy band, but I think he came out with a bit of credit. To be quite honest to him, to be quite fair to him.
Yeah, no, I think he really rose above and beyond.
Do you think you'll ever? Sorry, I was going to say, do you think you'll ever retire, or are you just having too much fun?
Well, I wouldn't say much. Yeah, I've had too much fun. I mean, the Hooters still tour. We Germany is the gift that keeps on giving, and we do at least a month there every summer. And then we do the U.S. is mostly Philadelphia, and although now we sort of have this annual tradition where we play Disney World.
All right.
So that's way too much fun, and the songwriting. This year since I moved to Stockholm, I've written and co-produced a song for a Finnish pop star. I've actually got a song on the soon-to-be released Claire Richards album. Claire Richards from Steps. I've done a song with Una Healy from the Saturdays. Who, by the way, I love her. I think she's a wonderful artist. And the song you wrote is like one of the best things I've ever done. I've produced the Swedish hard rock band. The hits just. I say the hits just keep on coming. I'm not saying that they're all hits, but just these crazy, varied opportunities come up, and it's too much fun. And I still do solo shows. Occasionally I get asked to do them. I used to love doing solo shows with the band, but it's too much work rehearsing a band. And I already have a band. I have the Hooters.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to do a solo show, it'll be pretty much me as a storyteller.
Do you ever get to Glasgow at all?
To Glasgow? Actually, I played Glasgow with a couple of years ago. I did the Light of Day tour.
Oh, right.
Which is are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did that. I did Glasgow with that. Actually, the Hooters. We did a TV show in Glasgow once, as I recall, back in the day. No, it's really one of my greatest disappointments is that we never really got a career in the UK. I really thought we had it made, satellite, Top of the Pops. We came back a few months later. We did a few shows which were wildly successful. We played the Town and Country, and Roger Waters came to see us.
Oh, wow.
Which is how we ended up in the Wall concert. We are on that DVD.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And actually, we still, Roger comes to town. We see him. He's very, very gracious, very nice to us. But I think All You Zombies was the second single that was released there, even though it was from an older album. But we never really got a foothold in the UK, which is a shame, because all of my early inspiration for musically was British.
I still know quite a lot of Hooters fans. In fact, because I actually lived in America for a few years, and I think the most American night of my life was when I was just driving in my friend's pickup truck with the windows down, and I persuaded him to play the Hooters. And I don't know why, but it was just driving sort of at twilight with your music on really loud. I just thought that was the most amazing thing in the world, being British, it was just brilliant. So
are you Glaswegian?
No, I'm actually from Yorkshire originally, but I've got a strange accent because I've lived all over the place. So. But
very interesting. I spent one of the most formative summers of my life in York.
Oh, really?
Yep. I spent the summer of 1973 there. I was in university, and I did an archaeological dig.
Oh, right.
In York, and I was there for most of the summer, and it was life-changing.
Yeah, there's lots of Viking and Roman things there, isn't there?
It was just amazing. I loved the Wall. I loved the Wall at sunset. There was a pub called Wagon and Horses on Juliegate, which is no longer there. I was back a couple of years ago with my family, and I loved that city. I had the best time there. I learned to enjoy warm bitter and single malt.
Yeah, you got to have a taste for it, I think.
So actually, I live around the corner from a very nice pub called Oliver Twist, where they always have several good bitters on tap.
Brilliant.
Served at the proper temperature.
Yeah, room temperature.
Yep. So I remember every day I would go and I was working at the cattle market. We were excavating the cattle market before they were going to build whatever they were going to build there. And I went to the same pub every day and had a ploughman's lunch at 2 or 3 pints.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's one thing I missed over in. It's easy enough to make, but it's one thing I missed in America. It was actually going to a pub to drink and not just to, all the ones. Cause I lived in Minnesota, and there tend to be diners where you go to eat primarily and maybe have one beer.
Yeah.
It's not the same culture, really,
the pub culture in the UK and Germany as well. They've got a pretty, but like Sweden doesn't have that. Sweden, you go out to go out. It's not just to hang out and see who's